Good evening, everybody. My name is Kim Dorman. I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator for the Princeton Public Library and also the Associate Festival Director for the Princeton Environmental Film Festival. Welcome to the virtual Princeton Environmental Film Festival. This is a new experience for us, and I know for you, so many of us, even though we've kind of gotten used to this virtual world. So we really look forward to hearing any feedback that you might have about this experience, ways that we can make it better, and what you're enjoying. We first learned about this film, The Sacrifice Zone, when it was highlighted in a town hall held by the New Jersey Environmental Justice Alliance, a group that you should all learn about if you're not already familiar with them. They were raising awareness about a bill, S-232, which they note on their thing is a once-in-a-lifetime environmental justice bill that I just learned passed. So that's really exciting, positive news that I think a lot of us could do more with. We were so compelled by the work being done and the film that even though we'd already sort of planned the festival by the time that we heard about it, we reached out to see if we could include it. And I'm really happy that Julie reached back out and let us bring it to the festival. I am very pleased to have Julie Winokur and Nyheim J Carter here to talk this evening, a little bit more about the film and about the work that they're each doing. Julie has been a storyteller for over 2 decades, first as a magazine writer and then as a documentary filmmaker. She launched Talking Eyes Media in 2002 as a way to focus on creating visual media that catalyzes positive social change. Her work has appeared on PBS, the Documentary Channel, Media Storm, National Geographic Magazine, and Discover It Online, as well as Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, and many other papers. She's received 2 Emmy nominations and numerous awards from World Press, Pictures of the Year International, and the Society for Professional Journalists. Beyond broadcast and publication, Winokur works extensively with nonprofit organizations to develop their messages and put Talking Eyes films to work at the grassroots level. She has been on faculty at Rutgers University Newark and the International Center of Photography in Newark. With a slightly shorter resume, but also doing amazing work, is Nyheim J Carter. He's a youth community activist and an urban farmer, along with many other talents. I think he does a lot to, from our brief conversation today, I learned he does a lot to sort of build resilience in his community, including serving on the board of his, as a secretary for what, again, Nyheim? Your housing organization? Commission? I can't remember. He can tell you.
Yeah, I'm the secretary of my housing complex, which is the Higher Court.
All right, awesome.
Can you guys hear me? I'm good.
Thanks. So I'd like to start.
Okay. It's a little loud inside, but I can work with it.
Okay. In the film, you talk, Nyheim, about how much you like the Ironbound community. Some of the challenges were highlighted. But I wanted to start by asking you what the Ironbound community means to you.
The Ironbound just means it means my heart to me because I have never lived nowhere else. I've been in the Ironbound all my life since I've been young, and I've had so many experiences and so many stories that shaped me into the person that I am today. So I couldn't imagine myself somewhere else. I love this place, and I'm gonna keep fighting for this place. I love this place.
Yeah, you're doing a lot for Julie. You work in Newark. What brought you to tell this story?
So I do a lot of work in Newark. I actually live in Montclair, and I have my company in Montclair. But for the past 6 years, I've been doing a project that emanates out of Rutgers Newark called Newest Americans. And it's all about immigration and identity and about this intersection within Newark of many cultures. Folks have migrated from somewhere else and made Newark home. Mm-hmm. And then we do stories that are about sort of transnationalism and how mm-hmm. people in Newark are connected to other places and whatnot. And so through that work, I've done a bunch of work in the Ironbound, and, because it's obviously culturally a really rich place. But this film came out of having gone on the Toxic Tour. As part of learning about the Ironbound, I went on the Toxic Tour. And you see the Toxic Tour in the film. it blew my mind, really. It was shocking to me that for all I knew Newark, and I'm a New Jersey native, and I live, all of 5 miles away, I realized that this was a neighborhood that I had gone through, had passed over, had flown over thousands of times in my life. And I think anybody who lives in the New York, New Jersey area has done the same thing. And you can do that being completely oblivious to what's going on the ground there. And so it just, for the first time, made me stop and think, what is this neighborhood that we're all impacting intensively through our habits, through our consumption, through our travel? And yet, we can kind of have blissful ignorance about it because it's not our neighborhood. It doesn't touch us. Somehow it's a safe distance, and we don't have to stop and think about the impact of our actions. And so for me, honestly, it's one of the rare times that I just felt like, there's something monumental happening in my backyard, and I had no idea. It was like my backyard was invisible to me, even though I had been looking at it, staring at it for years. And so I just felt, again, it's like I've been immersed in storytelling around Newark, and if this was news to me, surely it's news to a lot of people.
Right.
A lot of people.
I do want to just make a note that sometimes if the Wi-Fi is unstable, then the picture goes in and out. This has happened a couple of times, but we should still be able to hear you, Nyheim, just so to make people aware of that. I learned a lot watching that film. I mean, I think
I'm a little late.
Sorry. Yeah. I'm sorry that we're having trouble with your audio. We did a good test earlier, but I think we can manage through. So I was like, I didn't know anything about the Passaic River, and I think that it's a really big question that the story highlights, the bigger question about like our consumer culture. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like, so many people think like, don't think about what they're buying, what happens with it, its life. And as I think it was Emily said in the film, like who does this serve and who does it harm?
Yeah.
And, I think that we have these wins, sort of like the bill passing, which I don't know, would either of you like to talk about that a little bit? So if people aren't familiar.
I'd love to jump in, and Nyheim, if you want to add to it. So this is the actually most progressive piece of environmental justice legislation in the country. Just got passed in New Jersey. Go Jersey. 2 weeks ago, got signed by Governor Murphy. And in essence, what it does is it says that in order to issue permits to any kind of polluting industry in the state of New Jersey in the future, the Department of Environmental Protection is going to have to take into account cumulative impacts on a neighborhood. So they will have to take into account all of the polluters in the neighborhood, not just single permits being examined for what that particular business is, releasing into the air, the water, the ground. And that's huge because, as you see in the sacrifice zone and what Nyheim is just, living through and he captures in the film is just this like barrage of noise pollution, air pollution, water pollution. And so historically what we've done is when the DEP issues permits, they basically look at this one company, this one proposition, and they say, okay, well, you tick the boxes. You're within the limits that are established by the DEP and the EPA. And nowhere are we taking into account that if you live in that neighborhood, that one polluter is not your only polluter. And so it literally came down to one word, that the DEP should take cumulative impacts into consideration or will. And what the ICC fought for, what Maria fought for, and Ana Baptista, people you see in the film, Kim Gaddy, whose voice is in the film, but you didn't see her, but a lot of incredibly inspirational and dogged fighters on the environmental justice front in New Jersey fought to make sure that that one word, which seems so small, was part of the language in that bill. And so it did get signed. And now the next step is figuring out how to implement so that it has the teeth it needs to have. And so, part of what we're interested in doing is using the film to raise awareness around the state so that we make sure people understand what's at stake. And we make sure that that bill actually is, lives up to its expectation.
It's really tough because I think we, both of you do feel like, learning this information about, our collective consumption has impacted the way that you live or what you're doing.
Hey, Nyheim, how about you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm actually just listening to you guys talking just now. I was just trying to figure out the live. Am I on time now? Am I good?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, the whole time, I'm sorry. I was trying to figure out the system and stuff like that.
Yeah, no worries.
No worries. So do you feel like, Nyheim, you started, I learned in the NBC feature, which I'll link later for everybody, that just came out. You started farming, I think, at Downbound Farms, which you can find out more about below. When you were 10, when do you think you started being a community activist, or what are the things that move you to affect change?
So yeah, with Julie saying our backyard was invisible, when I was younger, I didn't know that was a whole thing, the whole back Port of Newark and all the factories and Superfunds back there. When I was younger, I didn't even know that was a thing back there. And now that I know, and I educated myself, and I've been with the ICC. Now I know those are a lot of those factories and Superfunds caused a lot of problems in my community. A lot of asthma and stuff. And but just to say that really quick, and to go back to what your question was, me being 10 years old, I was just a kid curious, I always wanted to go outside the neighborhood. And my first time, stretching far out the neighborhood, I found the ICC. So yeah, that was so great. And I met Miss Emily, and she got me into the gardening program. And then I would come there every Saturday. And then obviously being with Miss Emily and being around her, she's going to let you know about the things that's going on around in the world. And, that's when I started to learn and build on things like that. But yeah, it was definitely Miss Emily, she helped me out a lot in the beginning and a lot in the middle too, but she's no longer around. But yeah, I love her so much.
Can you talk a little bit more about the ICC?
Oh yeah. But more recent stuff that I do now.
Oh, well, both.
So yeah, back as a child, I did a lot of CCRB meetings, which is the Civilian Complaint Review Board. That's a part of NCAP, which now I'm actually a youth member, a part of. And just stuff like that to hold police accountable and, just stop police brutality and all this nonsense going on right now. And that was one thing that we did. I would always go to a lot of Passaic River meetings. I'm actually a part of the community Passaic. Wait, I got that wrong. Tongue twister. I'm a part of the community. The community advisory group, the Passaic Community Advisory Group. It took me a second. I'm sorry, guys. But yeah, I'm also a part of that now. To I joined that to get a further knowledge of the Passaic River, because I know it's been really bad and really dirty for a really long time. So me being so young and being a youth member on the Passaic Community Advisory Group, it'll help me, gain this knowledge, keep the fight going. And, it's just something interesting to me. Not a lot of kids my age, are interested in helping the community. So,
no, it's amazing how much you're doing. And I think that it's been, since you've been sort of doing the farming and things since you were 10 and had Miss Emily as a mentor, I think that you've had such a great mentorship. You must have sort of a understanding. I think so often, we hear about a problem, we want it to fix. And this bill we were just talking about, that took 10 years, more than 10 years for people to sort of come up with the idea and try and push this through, which seems like so long. How do you feel about sort of the challenge of how long it takes to do things sometimes?
So, These so being in intergenerational spaces, with being with people from different generations and different times in the fight, just seeing and hearing their stories is just it sparks a fire in my heart to just keep their fight going. And I'm already interested in helping my community, so I just try to help them as much. And just hearing the stories and all the pain they went through to get my generation in the positions that we are. Now I know I have to, go 1,000 for my ancestors, because they fought long and hard for me to get to the position that we're at, and we got to make sure we execute.
That's amazing. And Julie, you bring up a lot of the sort of the historical struggle in the film, what people were talking about in the 70s. Did you know that you wanted to do that going into making the film, or did you just, as the film evolved, you thought that was important to talk about the previous work?
I think I was aware of all of that. I was definitely, I was struck by how slow the change is. Environmental justice moves at a glacial pace. And honestly, I went into the film knowing there was a big issue to be addressed. And I really was interested in cumulative impact because, why are we dumping so much on so few people, right? So there's this direct correlation between, Black and brown communities, low-income communities, and bearing an egregious burden for all of us, And so when I went into the film, I do feel like it was a bit of whack-a-mole because I was chasing one issue after another issue. I was looking at the Superfund site, the diamond alkali site, where we have this dioxin repository in the bottom of the Passaic. And I was looking at Covanta because when we started filming, they were up for permit renewal. And so I thought, surely that will give me an arc for this film because that permit will have been it'll have been accepted, rejected within a short period of time. Little did I know, 2 years later, it's still pending. So a permit renewal that was, requested 2 years ago is still, piles and piles of paper, and all kinds of other issues have come up in the interim. There have been plumes of pink smoke coming out of Covanta that is apparently iodine, and that's being investigated. But it was like every time I turned around, there'd be another issue. We had a whistleblower come out of the woodwork when I started filming, and I thought, well, there's the story. We have a whistleblower working at a site that it was being remediated, and this guy sent photos, to the ICC, to Maria, that showed a cover-up of toxic waste. Basically, a site that's supposed to be cleaned up, and there was evidence that it was not being cleaned, it was just being buried. So then I started following that, and the whistleblower went silent. So it was a series of one issue after another. And in some way, I feel like the film's not done because I feel like I'm halfway there because, we are sharing this material because we have to. And I feel like the clock's ticking. People's lungs aren't waiting for us to finish this film, so it's important that we get the materials out. But I still feel like this is a story being written, thanks to, thankfully, we've got young people who will take the torch and carry it and keep fighting. But it was important in the film to show that this is now decades of fighting and still fighting and still not satisfied and still not breathing clean air.
I think, there are so many powerful parts of the film. There's so many questions. I keep reordering them that I want to ask you. But in the, when they were talking about, you went and after Anna Batista and others had a meeting with the ICC. With the Covanta folks. And then you went and spoke with Covanta. And then you went back and showed people the footage that you got from that. And just, the rage and the frustration with the greenwashing of how the story is presented and what's important. And it's sort of I think that, with your film and with the work that you're doing, you're trying to recenter, what is important? Like, there are people's lives here. They're like, we can't just be like, well, we're just 2% of the problem. Well, you're still having an impact, and you're something we can change. Do you know what I mean? Like, we can then worry about the planes and everything else. But how do we recenter what's important? You know, talk about, I can't remember who said it in the film, but, you know, regenerative economies, like not economies where, you know, its harm is just, you know, something that happens, unfortunately, that we recognize that we can't do that anymore.
But I want to make something really clear, and, you know, and I hope it comes across in the film, is that when you go into Covanta in the film and you see what our garbage looks like.
Yes.
I mean, we contributed to that, you know, the three of us here and everybody else who's listening to this. So we made that garbage. And so I definitely don't want to be pointing fingers at like the two gentlemen from Covanta and say, you guys are the bad guys, because they're not the bad guys, you know, like in the sense that we're making too much trash. We are buying too much disposable junk. We are, you know, we are contributing. And so we all need to own responsibility, you know, and you know, there have got to be better ways to deal with our trash, for sure. But I certainly don't want to make it where it's like we can demonize, you know, any individual or any single company. You know, we have to have a whole culture shift, you know, and this is why the just transition is so important, and regenerative economy, recyclable, you know, a cyclical economy is important. Use and reuse.
No, I totally agree with you, and I apologize. Like, sometimes it is tempting to say, you know, but you know, we're all holding a part of the harm.
Yeah.
And, you know, until we sort of recognize that in whatever we're talking about, whether it's the environment or, you know, anything else, you know, we have to start recognizing that if we want to affect any change. In the film, you bring up, you know, all the other, like, that this isn't an isolated issue. You know, it's Newark, it's Camden. And then you sort of go across the United States and talk about other communities that are impacted. Another film that we're showing, you mentioned Mossville in your list. We're showing Mossville. I encourage everybody to watch that, also an important film. You know, Nyheim, I wanted to ask, I know that you've done another panel, I think you said in Missouri, like, in the work that you're doing, are you, obviously a lot of it's centered in Newark, but are you collaborating with communities across the United States?
Actually, yeah, which is insane. I never really done nothing like that before, you know, collaborated with people in different states, you know, probably like New York and New Jersey type thing, but that's a brother-sister state. So, you know, to be collaborating with like Milwaukee and, you know, hearing their stories and, you know, them telling me about stuff going on over there and me telling them stuff about going on over here, you know, just sharing stories and trying to, you know, see if we could come up with solutions, actually, you know, share their solutions, share their tactics, you know, how they went about, you know, trying to stop this, and maybe we could apply that over here because, you know, the policies are a little looser on different sides of town. So, yeah, I definitely, you know, want to collaborate with different people in the future, most definitely, especially different states and stuff, because everybody has different experiences.
Is that sort of learning the way different, like, what's the most heartening thing, or like the most, like, you know, it could go sort of either way. You're a very positive person. So it could be like, yes, okay, we can solve this problem together. Other people are just like, oh my God, the problem's so big. I can't.
Yeah.
Nothing. Like, so is it kind of like a balance for you, or are you action oriented about like, I need to carry the work of my ancestors forward?
I feel like it's if there's ever like a person that, you know, is like a not a group type person, you know, I feel like in every room I'm always the person, you know, that's trying to bring everybody together. And you know, some people just, you know, just need that bringing in, and, you know, that teamwork and that love, and, you know, they need to be shown that. So, you know, and when we're able to show that we can all work in a group, you know, so many bright ideas come up. And especially, you know, working with youth members, you know, in my community, there's not a lot of us, but the few of us we do stick together, and, anytime we have an idea or anything, we definitely let each other know about it. So I would always let that person know that's, shying away, to try to join in one time just for me.
Very compelling. So, I know that you're pretty passionate about Downbound Farms. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so Downbound Farms is my second home. It's about 5 blocks away from where I live, and it's basically an urban farm. I'm most sure it's the biggest one in the Ironbound, and we just grow a lot of fresh produce there for the community. We have our farmers markets. Anytime we do harvest festivals, we always give out bunches of produce, and we actually, people just walk by and, they like that flower, they like the cabbage that we're growing, or the kale, or the sage that we have, we always just try to provide for them. And that's just what we're there for, We throw events there all the time with like harvest festivals, and we recently got a pumpkin patch coming up, and just community meetings to where we could just talk and have these discussions about things that's going on in the area, because, we know all the situations that's going on around the world, but a lot of people in my community, the Black and brown communities, don't really know or are keeping up with that type of thing. So, just letting them know and, trying to educate them on things like this, it could definitely, shape the future. And that's what Downbound Farms is doing, is shaping the future of, all the young African-American and all the young kids in general in the community, is making them inspired to come garden. Yeah.
Mm. That's great.
I think it's cool too, Nyheim, you can tell me how you feel about this, but I think a lot about the fact that Downbound Farms is a lot that would have been barren like any other barren lot in the neighborhood, right? There's a lot of those kinds of lots that they may be brownfields, right? They might actually have toxic chemicals in them, because there are over 200 brownfields in the Ironbound. And so what it shows, it's like living proof that you can take dead earth and create a living, breathing, vibrant, and socially connected space. It's like beautiful in that way. It's almost like, going from black and white to Technicolor in a movie, like The Wizard of Oz, so it is possible, but also everything is raised above ground, because the soil itself is no good. That's dead soil. So, it does require, having raised beds in order to achieve what they've done.
The festival director writes, Julie, thank you for making this film. Can you speak to how you chose to depict the conflict between Covanta and the citizens? I thought it was presented in an honest, urgent way that was not sugar-coated.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. And Covanta is one of the most obvious, Maria calls it public enemy number one in the Ironbound. It's really obvious because it is burning trash 24/7. And you saw in the film this history of, not wanting that thing there. And, there would have been more incinerators in the Ironbound if the community had not risen up. And so, it is one of many polluters. It happens to be one of the most visible polluters. So therefore it makes it somewhat iconographic as a polluter as well. And there's been a history of violations of the permit. I actually went through so the film is airing on NJTV on Thursday night. And so the lawyers for NJTV came back to me and they said, well, we just want to know, are you sure there have been permit violations? Because there's a reference to permit violations. So I went on the DEP's website and I counted like over 200 violations, some small, some large. I'm not also, some might have been, I don't mean to, 200 sounds like it's, like nobody should be within 50 miles of it. But it also, so I don't know the level of violations so much as I went through all of the DEP's reports, there were many. Then, there was this history also of Covanta being forced to improve its business practices because of the watchdogging that the community has done. Now, there's something tragic when a community, which like I certainly don't know within my community, like what's being emitted from the dump a block away. And nor do I expect myself to be an expert on that, because I trust that my community, leaders, the people we elect, are going to ensure my safety. And what happens in the Ironbound and in EJ communities is that you realize you can't trust anybody else to ensure your safety. And, one of the things in the Ironbound that has shocked me too is that the EPA keeps an air monitor in Newark, and it's up the hill. It's not in the Ironbound, and it is not reading what is going on in a neighborhood that is more heavily impacted than the rest of the city. And so it's almost like when you realize that there is no official air monitor even that is serving the community, that alone, shows a lapse in the system. And so then it's incumbent on the community to have to gain an expertise, which the ICC has been, honestly stellar at doing, bringing scientists, lawyers, and community activists together. And they've really set a standard, and they are recognized nationally for that. So anyway, so Covanta, in answer to the question, the timing, because of the permit that, was up for renewal, the visibility of Covanta, and the desperation of the neighborhood to get, this polluter out of the neighborhood.
I think that one of the things that you do well in the film, because it's hard, except, like you can talk about the noise, you're talking to Nyheim and it's sort of like the planes keep going by, or, you talk about smells and you kind of can sort of represent that in a sort of pictorial way. But so much of the harm is being done by things you can't see or smell. Was it a challenge for you to sort of think about ways to present that? I felt that you did it pretty effectively when you showed the map and he talked about the chemical corridor.
I love the segment with Nyheim because that was like in real time. And it was we were out there, hanging out in a place that you go to all the time. And it was funny because we started counting the planes just because they kept interrupting the interview. So we started counting them, and even you were like, wow, they're loud. Wow. It was like, that's 12. That's 14. It was like, I think even for you, that was a moment of discovery.
I wouldn't say a moment of discovery because actually, I'm used to like the planes going over, just specifically that day, they were like extra crispy loud. And they just went over like they were taking off at the airport that day, But yeah, we're definitely used to the planes going over and being so close, Just it's a problem that we always face. And to talk back about, I think you guys were talking about with the trucks and stuff, the trucks in the Ironbound it's crazy, A lot of the truck drivers don't have no respect for the community. They just try to cut down little streets that they're not even supposed to be cutting down and polluting areas and cutting through the neighborhood when they know they're not supposed to be cutting through the neighborhood. They're supposed to be staying on the truck routes. So yeah, just the airplanes to the trucks is just, it was crazy. And that day I went back and when I watched the documentary, that day those planes were taken off.
Right. And the trucks, they do truck counts. The ICC does truck counts, and 10,000 a day.
Truck counts since like the first thing that I really got to with ICC is like the truck counts. I remember being with my Uncle Murad and Miss Emily. Them telling us to go in certain corners with our groups and just counting specific trucks. It was crazy. All the trucks that we counted and. When we're on different corners and we all come together to add up our corners, it's just so many trucks used to come through in Ironbound and still do. I don't know the exact numbers, but the tallies.
Yeah. And it's a huge impact. Like, I think that people,
Yeah.
like, you sort of see the trucks, like if you're going through, but like thinking about what that means in terms of air pollution and, so many towns try and move trucks away from their communities in one way or another. And Newark doesn't have that option.
Right. And they're
right now.
mostly diesel trucks because we have been unsuccessful in getting rid of the older trucks in this area. And so, sadly, even if we could implement a system that helps finance the purchase of newer trucks, then we would at least reduce the burden of the PM 2.5 in the air, which is coming out of diesel engines. So, there's room for improvement, short of radical change, there is definitely room for improvement.
Another question we got from the audience is from Doug B. Thank you for making a film of local interest. It is appreciated as many of us only get a view of the area while traveling the New Jersey Turnpike. As explicitly pointed out in the film, the major problem is not really the incinerator, but the airport, the port, the traffic, and the surrounding Superfund sites that are creating the adverse living conditions and health concerns. And they ask, why is there the focus on the Covanta Incinerator? I'll let you speak to that.
So I have a confession to make, only because I had gotten a grant to work on this film. And so we actually have an hour-long cut of the film that goes into all these other things and gives much more equal weighting to various challenges in the neighborhood. And so at the end of the grant cycle, they said, we gave you this grant to make a film that's half hour or less. And I said, well, great, here, look at my hour-long cut. And they're like, we love this. This is awesome. But we still need that half-hour version because that's, what, the funding was for. So in order to cut down the material, we had to lock in on one of the threads that we've been following. And so, one thing about documentary filmmaking, it's like you're taking people on a journey. They want something delivered at the end of the journey, so that you're not just sort of like, hey, we threw out 1,000 threads and ideas, and then we went down that road and that road and that road and that road, and we never returned to the first road you went down, because it's frustrating for a viewer. So, just in terms of like the sausage factory of making a film. So that's why I also say I don't feel done with this one, because, we finished the film and then the law passed. So even that, we had been filming the, Troy Singleton introducing that legislation. And then, then it was a new session of the legislature, start all over again, reintroduce the legislation. And I honestly thought of all the things that we were following, that law getting passed was the last thing that would come through. Because that was 12 years already in the making. There was no way that was the thing that would deliver. So I'm still, honestly, like anybody who's, watching through the festival, we are only just beginning to show this film, through a handful of festivals. I didn't want to hold on to the material, and not have it seen. But there is that part of me that I will go back in and add in other things because, there's a fuller story.
Well, I think I read somewhere that this is like a part of an ongoing series. Is that correct? Did I just make that up?
Oh, goody. But the story's not over,
Right.
The story's really not over. And I hate the idea that you start showing something and then it's just done, because there's a sequel to come.
And you're showing this after this festival. We're just making it available Monday, Tuesday. Maybe you said we could extend it a little bit if people want to watch, but you have another festival coming up. And then you said, as you mentioned, it's going to be on NJTV on Thursday night. So get the word out.
So it's at the Montclair Film Festival. And so what we did actually for that festival and for the NJTV broadcast is that we pre-recorded a panel that includes Senator Singleton, who co-authored the law. And we've got Elizabeth Yampierre, who is from the Climate Justice Alliance national organization. and Maria Lopez Nunez.
Great. There are so many things that you could be working on along with your garden, Nyheim. Where do you feel like? I think sometimes with me, I'm just interested in everything, and I do a little bit here and a little bit there. Is there something that you are turning your focus towards, that you sort of want to be that sort of thing that you're working on the most?
Oh. It's funny because I've actually been thinking about that.
Yeah.
Oh, you guys can hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I've actually been thinking about that, and I actually like, just doing little projects and, just trying to provide as many resources to the community as I can. And I've been actually thinking about starting this project called Refrigeration Station. I got the idea from a friend of mine that I work with, Karina Miles, and it's basically, all the fresh produce that we grow at the farm, sometimes we can't sell it, or sometimes, not enough people walk by for us to give it out to. So if we're able to set up these refrigerators in front of corner stores in the community and around the area, we could store these refrigerators and freezers with these fresh produce and non-perishable foods and stuff like that. And I'm at the very beginning with it, and I've actually researched on it and seen a couple people able to do it. So just baby steps first, starting off. But yeah, I definitely want to just keep doing projects and just keep trying to give as many resources to my community as possible.
Yeah, that's exciting. I think what I love so much about the garden, gardens grow, in a way as you see, you're planting seeds, you're getting new life from old seeds. You see, like, that if you care the soil, like, if you give a plant the soil and water that it needs, that it's going to thrive. Yeah. And I think that there's something, especially when you're working on harder issues, of being able to put your hands in the dirt and create something that's sustaining for other folks. It's really restorative in a way. And I just love how so much of the work that you're doing is kind of making all these different ties into your community and building resiliency.
Yes.
I've been so grateful to get to know you, even in this brief time. I'm really excited about your work. And if you want to learn more, please follow Downbound Farms on Instagram. So you can sort of see what else you can do to support the work that Nyheim is doing. Is there anything else that you'd like to share before we close?
I just want to say one quick thing, because, people are always wondering, what can you do?
Yes.
What do I do?
I'm reticent to ask that question.
Right. I'm upset, and now what do? I watch this film, and I hear these people talking, and I want to change things. And there are a couple of things. I would strongly recommend supporting the Ironbound Community Corporation. I would strongly recommend supporting environmental justice activists in your neighborhood. They're doing great work, and they're doing the hard work that most of us are not doing. And so I think that in recognition of that, you support in whatever way you can. And sometimes it's money, sometimes it's time. And I feel really strongly too, having done this work, and I also ended up teaching an environmental justice class at Rutgers because I got so passionate about this. And one of the things I did is I had my students, I said, part of your assignment is you have to go to a zoning board meeting or a permit hearing. You've got to show up, get your body in the room, because what happens with this, and I filmed it too many times, is that you get to these meetings where important decisions are being made or where citizens get to express their concerns, and they're the same 10 people in the room. So it's not good enough to let those people carry all of our weight, and so if you want to do something, show up in that room, show up when you can, find out when a permit hearing is happening, find out when a zoning board is meeting. And, I understand most people, it's not your job, so you're not going to show up all the time. But the folks who do the heavy lift for us appreciate it so much when there are more bodies in that room, because it shows the authorities that we care and we're listening and we are going to hold people accountable. My students were shocked when they got into some of those meetings. It's the first time they'd ever been to any kind of a public hearing. And they were so pissed because they felt like the people who were in the front of the room behind the desks looked bored. Mm. And they got really angry. They were like, I could see that guy was like, you know, he was writing emails or he was on Facebook. He wasn't even listening, you know. And so I think that this question of accountability is really important. And if we're not going to put our bodies on the line and show up in those rooms, then, you know, it just goes from bad to worse.
Right. Nyheim, you show up at these meetings. I think show up. That's my thing for everybody. Like show up, just show up. So
I actually, weirdly enough, I actually enjoy being in these meetings. You know, just seeing my coworkers, you know, just go at these people and fight against the community. I mean, fight for the community. You know, it's just me, you know, learning just right there. This is my classroom. You know, me being in these meetings, that's me learning and educating myself, and them educating me. And you know, I just love being in all those meetings. And like how Julie said, just, you know, have a body in there, you know, just show support, you know, even if you're not confident enough to really talk, you know, just be there, be a body, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, if anybody else has a last question, you have to ask the question below. It's so hard on these Zoom talks, I think. But overall, I really appreciate so much that you made this film and that you're sharing the stories and that you worked so hard to make sure that you're lifting voices of people who are in the community, who are living it and who are affecting change. Because I think so often a lot of films are talking to people who are, not necessarily connected. And I think it's critical to do that work and to show the people who are affecting the change. So Nyheim, thank you so much for coming. Julie, thank you so much for coming and making the film. And I hope that we can continue to be in touch so we can learn how we can support the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Have a wonderful evening.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank you. I appreciate it so much. This is a good thing.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.